Welcome to the Mental Health Boot Camp podcast.
Boop, 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 boop.
This is the podcast where 4 therapists, 3 of us Canadian, 1 of us Americans serve you cutting edge mental health knowledge. I'm Dr. Ryan Howes, clinical psychologist from Pasadena, California.
And I'm Dr. Brooke Lewis, a registered clinical counselor from the Greater Vancouver area.
And I'm Joanna Boyd, psychotherapist from the Greater Vancouver area.
I'm Chris Boyd, registered clinical counselor from Coquitlam.
Right on. That's who we are. It's very warm in Canada right now. It's warmer in Canada than it is here in the States, or at least in Southern California, which is wild. And you guys are coping famously, very politely, I would imagine.
Yeah, we're staying cool, drinking lots of water. I actually shifted, I had called some of my clients to see if they could do virtual today instead of coming in, although the office is air conditioned. But my little doggos just love to stay upstairs unless I kindly invite them downstairs to join me. So I have to say, would you like to watch a show? And then Bear will come down and they say, Panda, would you like to join us? And then Panda will come down.
Oh, wow.
But if I'm not in the basement, they'll stay upstairs, and then I'm worried they're going to die. So
Because it's too hot.
too hot.
And no one does air conditioning up there.
No.
Wow, you have polite dogs as well in Canada. I had no idea that went all the way to the canines. It's great.
It's true. It's true.
Well, some houses have AC. Just
Okay.
none.
Yeah, none of ours.
And not as common as where you live there.
Yeah.
I'm sure it's a staple.
It's kind of a must have for a lot of places down here. Sure, not every place does, but it's pretty important. But yes, gosh, I'm just thinking about those dogs again. Just think the dog's saying, "Sorry, don't mean to interrupt. I didn't mean to interrupt your process," right? I don't know what this is all about. Oh, I'm giving you a hard time, man. Sorry about that. Guys, so anything new in the world of mental health that you're aware of? I know that the APA conference is going on right now in Washington, D.C., because I keep getting notifications about that. American Psychological Association, a bunch of people get together and share research and fun things like that.
Yeah, so it's more research focused, right? Versus clinical focused?
A lot of it, yeah. A lot of people say it's more research than clinical. I do think they have some clinical stuff to do there, but it's mostly people sharing research studies that they've conducted and, data. A lot of academics go there. Certainly some clinicians go there, but it's APA loves their research.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Any major shifts or changes coming down the chute for the APA?
Well, actually, I did hear that today there was one group where there were 3 TikTok therapists who were psychologists who were also very active on TikTok, who were sharing kind of how and why and what they do, which I think is interesting. That's kind of, definitely mental health awareness is all over social media, and these are folks who use the medium TikTok to spread some helpful mental health messages. So it's kind of cool.
Great.
Yeah.
I'm glad they're doing that. Social media is so interesting because by the time we catch up to this, apparently some job interviews are going to be done on TikTok. They're going to use it for, yeah. And so now mental health or marketing, then a new platform is going to come around, right? And then we're all going to have to shift over, relearn, rejig all of our content and carry on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This coming from the people who we built our mental health platform on a website, right? Not an app, and then a year ago decided let's start a podcast, right? So that's still pretty hip, but
yeah, we're behind a bit. Maybe we should start a TikTok. We should get on the TikTok.
I think we're already behind there. I think we need to find what the next thing is and get an early start on that one, whatever that might be. If anyone out there knows what the next big thing is beyond TikTok, write us, info@mentalhealthbootcamp.com. We're happy to,
We're in.
we're up for the new hip thing, whatever that might be. Yeah, I was thinking about trying to maybe send out like a newsletter via fax machine. Do you think that might be okay?
Yeah,
Oh,
I
nice.
think that's very modern.
We could fax people some mental health information.
Do you still
You said-
have a fax machine?
I actually have always, I boycott fax machines. I do not have one, never had one.
Wow.
Yeah.
But out of all the things to boycott, you have to expand on this.
Well, that's just one. I felt like even when I was getting started in my practice in the early 2000s, I was like, I just don't see the necessity for this fax machine thing.
Yeah.
You know, with
You
the
already had
dot,
you already had a pager.
I had a
Then you had
pager.
DOS,
Right.
Laser disc player.
laser disc player, like fax machine is not going anywhere.
That's right. That's right. I had my, God, I'll go back even farther, you know, VHSs and Betamax and all these things. I had all the great technology, but fax machines with their dot matrix printers and their, it just seems cumbersome and lame. And even in the early 2000s, emails were better than that. So I figured I'm not doing fax machines. Yes, I have had to go to a local like Kinko's or other places where you can, at times where I actually had to use a fax machine. But it was cheaper and easier than buying a fax machine and getting an extra line dedicated to my fax machine. So that's my reason. I've held out. I think I'm okay now.
Okay.
I don't think we need faxes anymore. Do you guys have a fax machine? I mean, you're awful
No,
smoke over
office.
there.
The office does.
Yeah,
Yeah?
both offices. Yeah.
Yeah,
So there's
it's just like a
some.
photocopier, scanner, fax all in one.
Yeah, yeah, because some like third-party payers up here and insurance companies only want you to fax things in.
Wow.
Yeah, it's a real pain in the butt.
Yes, totally. I've got a scanner. I've got a scanner that will, you know, I can scan documents quickly, but I just don't understand the fax anymore.
So you must have been like an early adopter of a scanner then, because you had to do something else besides fax, right?
Yeah, for signatures and that sort of thing. Yeah, sure. I've got all that going on. But anyway, I'm sure this is riveting listening for our listeners.
Are we actually recording right now?
I actually kind of forgot we were.
Oh, yes, forget it. We'll move on from the fax debate, the great fax debate of 2021, which shouldn't even be a debate. All right. We have a topic tonight, don't we?
That's me.
Now, you were saying something earlier about the fact that you
I was stuck
were
for a
looking
topic.
for topics, and Chris gave you topics that weren't brook enough. Is that
Yep.
right?
Yeah, what does
That
that
is-
mean?
I don't know. They're kind of boring a
Oh,
little bit.
Like the last suggestion I gave you, that was totally brook enough.
Didn't you only give me one?
I can't remember.
Okay.
But yeah, no,
I,
it just,
I gotta give you a
I don't
few.
know.
Yeah.
Just didn't seem engaging enough. It seemed
Apparently not. If you can't remember, and I can't
simple
either. Yeah.
But
Yeah.
it's just as well, Chris, because now her topic will be a true ambush to you. So
That's true.
that's
That
true.
that
Trying to
too.
cheat a bit.
I'm among the many people out there who are now wondering what makes a question or a topic brook enough. There's something about that. What kind of formula, sort of secret sauce is necessary for it to be a brook enough question?
Yeah, no, I'm not really sure. I think I tend to do ones that we ponder, right? Like
Yeah.
it's not necessarily, or no, we did do some regarding like more diagnoses.
Mm-hmm. No, but yours definitely. Yours are your
Yeah,
questions
that's
are always
true.
very popular and always thinkers. They're always head scratchers for
Yeah.
us, at least initially.
Always pondering why I decided to join in tonight. I'm like, oh no.
Oh.
Yes.
It should be fine. It should be fine.
Okay.
I tried to phrase it in a unique and funny way.
All right.
It always makes you
It
ponder
makes-
why we did that maybe not in a toxic masculinity sort of way, but in a
Oh, man. See, who wants Chris to pick topics? Not me.
oh jeez. Chris, sorry, buddy. We love you. This is just, there was an easy joke. Easy joke to make.
The
Yeah.
one topic that you did that we were just not going to let you forget it.
It was a gotcha question. Yeah. And we should probably just delete that one.
Yeah, call it episode 13 and just have it blank.
Oh, that's too good. That's rich. Before we get into this though, really quick, we can't forget that we have to make it one little announcement, 1.5 announcements. The first announcement is that our book club will be taking place in a couple of weeks. And the book is called
What happened to you?
What Happened to You? Written by Oprah and someone else.
Well, Bruce Perry.
Harry.
Bruce Perry.
Mostly Bruce Perry with Oprah as secondary. Yeah.
Right. What Happened to You? That will be, so get your copy, read it. We'll be going over that in the book club 2 weeks from now. And the reason why it's 2 weeks from now, this is the other half of the announcement, is we're actually not going to hold one next week. So there you go.
I'll take a little summer vacation.
Little summer V, and we'll be back in 2 with the book club.
A V is also a 2 if you hold up your fingers.
Wow, summer V, 2 weeks. We'll be back then soon. That's perfect. Wow, book club's a little punchy tonight. All right, let us get rolling with Brooke's Brooke enough question. Send it on down south of the border, please.
Sending.
Okie dokie. This is a.
I hope we didn't fax it.
Oh yeah, fax it down. Fax it. I'm waiting for my fax machine to warm up.
Beep, 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 beep.
Yeah. Oh boy. Wow. This is a thinker. This is a head scratcher here, Brooke. It's a good one, though.
Just in how I propose the question, I think is a little random.
Okay, get ready. Here we go. Here's the question. Again, I'm being ambushed right now. I don't know what this question is. Here it is. Tonight, you will be visited by 3 ghosts. The ghost of psychology past, the ghost of psychology present, and the ghost of psychology future. What are your thoughts on where we've been, where we are, and where we are going?
Reflection question. Yeah. I thought we could do like just a little summary of how psychology and counseling, like the different themes and patterns, and a little bit of the history and where we are now, what's kind of big and trendy, and or how we've evolved to what we seem to incorporate now. And any guesses on where we might focus more in the future. I know that we can't tell the future, but yeah.
I like this, Brooke. This is great. This is great because it's not just about, sharing. I mean, we'll have some historical data and things to share here, but a lot of it's, us giving our own opinions about things. This is kind of fun.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay, so
everything's really built on each other, right? Like, I mean, we can't be where we are now without what we did in the past, but we still incorporate a lot of what was happening from the get-go. So Ryan, what were the years of Freud?
The years of Freud?
Yeah.
Freud got started in like the 1890s and then went up until the early 30s. And I think he died somewhere in there. So yeah, it was. So
the whole field is so new, really.
Really, really new, relatively new. Yes.
Yeah.
The saying that is overused that people like to say is that the psychology has a short history but a long past. So to say something like, I absolutely, of course, psychology has been around in the psyches of human beings since the beginning of human beings, right? But the history of it as an official area of study is relatively short.
Mm-hmm.
100 and something years. It hasn't been around that long.
Mm-hmm.
So, but this is good stuff. So let's. You sort of alluded to this when you said kind of the history of psychology and counseling. would you like us to focus more, because psychology itself is very broad, right? I mean, there's a lot out there when it comes to psychology as a science. People use psychology to design dashboards in cars. They use psychology to talk about elections, things like that.
Exactly.
But psychotherapy is something that's a little more specific, even though there's a lot of breadth within psychotherapy. But psychotherapy starting with Freud, like you mentioned, and then kind of going to some other folks, behaviorism and all that. That's a little narrower, but still some breadth there. So should we tackle the whole psychology or focus on therapy? What do you want to do, Brooke?
I was thinking, I was probably leaning more towards the therapy part, but I kept the word psychology in there just for word association to help our brains kind of activate a bit.
Well, and to be fair, also there's a lot of overlap there.
Absolutely, because you're going to use principles from a theory, and then you're going to apply those principles to these different areas, whether it's counseling or marketing or whatever, right? So really, there's just these kind of phases that I think the field has been through.
Yes. One thing to throw out there that I saw online this week, just as a little side note here, someone said people often think of the giants of early psychotherapy. They think of the giants of early psychotherapy as Freud, Jung, and Adler, right? But then they also pointed out that of the giants of early psychotherapy, Freud was 5'7", Jung was actually 6 foot tall, and Adler was 5 feet tall. He was not a giant by most people's conventional sense of the word, right? Kind of a smaller person.
Interesting.
For sure. I remember way back in early psychology courses, who the founding father of psychology was?
William Wundt.
Yeah, William Wundt. Wasn't it Wundt?
I believe so.
Remember,
I don't know where that just pulled out of, but yeah.
Remember our Psych 1000 or Psych 100 teacher, Cornelius Ray, Con Ray.
He was hilarious, by the way.
Yeah, William Wundt, I think, is given credit for, starting the first clinic for treating distress. I don't know when, it was a long time ago.
I recall that as well.
Well,
contribution. There it is.
There we go. Moving on to the 1960s.
That's how you just thought of that, Brooke. Well done.
Yeah.
I know this. Pick me. Yeah.
Sure.
It's almost like there's a who was that? Pavlov's dogs. You're kind of conditioned there to.
Yeah. I was like, I reviewed that flashcard a lot.
Well, I guess maybe, I mean, we could try to regurgitate history or go back to our old textbooks, but maybe we could just talk about some of the general trends of things, right? Like early on in psychology, at least more on the therapeutic side, the idea that Freud was coming up with was about the idea that we don't fully know ourselves, and we can't fully know ourselves, and we have to look to by the process of therapy, we can help to understand and uncover some more of ourselves that we don't fully know. He would call the unconscious. That we have some motivations and some drives and some things that we do that again we're kind of oblivious to unless they get kind of brought into our awareness. So this is where people say, gosh, I keep doing the same thing, keep making these same mistakes over and over, and I don't know why, or I feel kind of compelled or driven to do things that in the end I shake my head and go, gosh, why did I do that? And Freud would say that's because the unconscious kind of drives you to do things that you for some reason it has a purpose for doing that, trying to finish unfinished business, or you're trying to be self-destructive or get your aggression out or whatever that might be, even if you're unaware of it. And so that's the whole movement of psychoanalysis really kind of stems from this idea that we have unconscious motivations to do things. And psychoanalysis is this process of trying to uncover those unconscious motivations so that you can start taking control of them and say, you know what? I understand this now, and I'm not going to do it anymore. I'm going to do something else, make some different choices.
It's a bit of a brutal time back then too. You know, psychiatry, and I think it was like neurology and asylums, and they're trying to kind of figure it out. And I think Freud is, he not only you know, conceptualized the way that you just mentioned, but I think it was the focus is on the talking cure, right?
Yeah.
It's more collaborative, and you know, you can use that introspection, and so really a drastic shift from the whole psychiatry movement at the time, right?
Yeah, lobotomies. Yeah.
Yeah,
like
lobotomies.
The techniques that they were using back then, we would now find like torturous, right? Like there were like baths that were were they like extremely hot or cold, and then the whole lobotomy, where they're going in, for listeners, what that is, your brain has two hemispheres, and is connected by connective tissue. So they would go in and sever that connective tissue, and they felt that was going to fix things. So, and then your two sides of the brain couldn't talk to each other. So people did have differences there.
Yes.
There's a visitor in the basement. But there are other problems arose from that, right? Which would have been a little bit of a black swan. Now that we've read the book, it was they based their information on what they knew, not on what they didn't know.
Right.
Right. So yeah. Anyway, that's a interesting thing. So ECT.
Sure. I mean, yeah, ECT, which is still used and is actually, some people swear by it, say that it's a very effective treatment for severe depression, the kind of depression where people can hardly move or function at all. There was you made me think of an old one, Brooke, from way back in the day, called trepanning, maybe it was called, but that was where they would actually they would drill a hole in someone's head, to try to relieve pressure and maybe let out whatever sort of mental problem was going on. They actually drill a hole in the skull to help relieve some psychic pressure somehow. So we've had a variety. So Freud was a revolution in that he was like, let's just talk to people instead. Let's see what happens. And found some early success, interestingly enough, with a lot of people who had what they would call hysterical paralysis or hysterical blindness. And someone who really wants to punch somebody, their arm goes numb because their psyche says, no, you shouldn't punch this person. You shouldn't punch your dad or whatever it might be. Let's talk about it instead. And through talking about it, they would find the paralysis lifts. So there's interesting stuff in the early days of Freud.
And then his disciples were Adler and Jung. More psychoanalytic as well.
Yeah. Adler and Jung and Freud's daughter, Anna, and a bunch of other people who kind of came along and took up the torch after Freud.
Yeah.
But then there was another a swing to another side that said, forget about this unconscious stuff. Forget about all of this business that says we're going, we're acting on impulses and all that stuff. Let's instead go to just looking at the behaviors. Let's go strictly to the behaviors. And we get to know people like Watson and Skinner and Pavlov and terms like classical conditioning. And
we see a bunch of that today in dog training and ABA work, like behavioral analysis work for persons with autism.
Sure.
Like it's very much behaviorism, but it's almost detached. It's A plus B equals C. Like if you do this enough times, then the pattern's going to create, and then there we are, right?
Well, sure. And this is also laying the groundwork for modern day cognitive behavioral therapy, which is very much widely known, widely accepted, widely promoted. And for some graduate students, it's the only thing they learn. That's the only thing they learn is effective. Just CBT. So behaviorism is a not just a big movement, it's a massive movement. And some might say it's the kind of victorious when it comes to psychoanalysis versus CBT. A lot of people say that that behaviorism wins.
But
And
we
a
wouldn't have CBT without cognition, right? That was kind of the next wave after behaviorism.
Or
Was
was it,
cognitive therapy.
and also the humanistic existential stuff too, right? Because that was in the 1950s, I believe, like the Rollo May and Viktor Frankl and
How many waves are there?
Carl Rogers.
or person-centered, Rogers as well.
How many waves?
Yeah.
Well, it's kind of like any of the big, if you think about the big theories, they all kind of came one after another. Some of them clustered, but
Yeah, I think it was in the 50s, like Brooke was mentioning the cognitive side of things as well as the existential. I think it was all happening around the same time
yeah.
in the 50s, I believe.
And gestalt like psychology as well, kind of how we experience the world, that became something as well.
What do we know about Gestalt there, Joe? That's an interesting one.
Yeah, I think for like, I've used Gestalt before. I think it tended to be a little bit less of a focus on feelings and more of kind of how we experience the world. So a technique for Gestalt, just to say, would be like a 2-chair technique where you kind of, have the clients move between, like there's an empty chair and there's the client and they might be themselves and then they might talk to either another person or another part of themselves and they actually move back and forth. And so it's just kind of actually having them sit in that role. And try to experience whatever's going on playing that part. So that's just one little technique. I know that doesn't sum up all of what it is, but it's just kind of the process of, experiencing versus just talking about stuff.
Yeah.
Sure. Yes. Like that. I learned a long time that Gestalt means whole, WHOLE, right? So the idea is they were trying to incorporate the whole experience of the person, their behaviors, their thoughts, their feelings. Let's make this a whole experience for them. And the empty chair is a big one for them. A Gestalt therapist, and there's certainly a lot of overlap and bleed over for a lot of folks, but if you're sitting in there in a session and you're talking and like you're tapping your toe at the same time, your Gestalt therapist is definitely going to point that out. Like, tell me what your toe is telling us right now. Let's talk about what's going on with your twitchy arm right now. What are you trying to say here?
Which then fast forward to more modern day of
somatic.
Exactly, somatic and parts work.
Yeah.
You said parts work?
Yeah, when you like what part of you wants to whatever, like what your toe is saying, that's part of your body or part of your psyche, what part is what that part is saying.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it was interesting. Back
Schwartz, right? That's who's doing a lot of that
Richard
right
Schwartz,
now. Richard,
it's like the myth of the unified self, the family systems approach, that kind of stuff. Yeah. It seems like the 50s, or I believe it's the 50s, was such a busy time in psychology because you had the cognitive theories pop up from after behaviorism, as well as the existential stuff. And one theory I kind of like is REBT, rational emotive behavioral therapy, and so it's kind of within the cognitive realm, but it actually was a big shift there because it started to focus more on changing people's beliefs versus more of the creating or developing more insight of the unconscious, right? So it's kind of a shift away from the psychodynamic theories.
Albert Ellis, right?
Albert Ellis, yeah. And then, as Ron mentioned, cognitive behavioral therapy kind of came a little while later, combining the behaviorism with the cognitive theories. And I think that was in the 70s, probably 10 or 20 years after, which is extremely influential, CBT.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, they've also been like, so kind of more in the more recent-y decades, if we talk the past 30, 40 years, then like somatic work has really taken off. right?
Uh,
I think
sure.
that was huge. And then there was a big wave into neurobiology.
mhm.
Yeah,
But then a lot of trauma work and attachment work, like that started coming out. What I like about neurobiology stuff is it's actually quantifying the theories that everything that came before it. We can take a look with brain scans or different things and be like, what are we actually making changes or differences? What's actually going on there? And before we weren't able to do that. Granted, it's not telling us nearly close to probably a tenth of what the brain is doing.
Yeah.
But it gives us something more.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think more recently too, we've seen more the Eastern philosophies, or like mindfulness has become a big thing, or
That was
Buddhist
the past 20
psychology
years. Yeah.
last 20 years as well. So yeah, I think realized we maybe went too cognitive and been neglecting the body. So kind of
Mm.
shifted back to the interpersonal neurobiology, or kind of Dan Siegel's contribution, and that's actually more recent.
Or
And
even emotion focused therapy. When was that? 20 years ago?
that's true.
To
Yeah.
actually start talking about emotions again?
Yeah.
Was that Sue Johnson did it in couples and stuff, right? The emotionally focused. And was that just 20 years ago? Gosh.
I don't know for
Yeah.
certain.
Yeah, no. Yeah.
Ryan, do you kind of know when emotion focus came back?
There was someone else who really came up with emotion focused therapy, and he passed away a year ago or 2 years ago, and I don't remember. One of the founders passed away a couple years ago. From research from New York City, can't remember the name. He
Gary
did emotion.
Craig?
What's
Nope.
that?
Never mind. Sorry, Gary Craig. He did something called EFT, which is a different thing.
Sure. Sure. But I mean, anyway, so that kind of came out first, emotion focused therapy. Sue Johnson came in and said, let's apply this to couples. And then she came up with emotion focused therapy for couples. Her book came out in 2004, I think. I don't remember exactly.
Yeah.
But it's been around for a little bit.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think there's actually a tension out there about when 2008 her book came out. Got it. All right. But I think there's a tension out there between there's always been a tension in psychotherapy about what should we focus on? What's at the root? What's the cause of the problem, right? Is it a person's background? Is it the way they think? Is it how their emotions work? Is it what's going on in their body? Is it something more behavioral? And these are, and it's not that there's wrong answers necessarily, but I think we have a real hard time finding an actual unified theory. And I guess when we get to the part of your question, Brooke, that says, well, what's the future going to hold? I think the dilemma that we're in psychology is the future going to be more dispersion of theories? I mean, there are many theories out there of what makes people tick, and they're like some recent count was like 700, like 700 psychotherapeutic modalities out there.
Wow.
Is that just gonna keep multiplying and increasing? Will there be thousands of ways of viewing human behavior and thought and emotion? Or will there be more of a unification? Will someone kind of come along and say, okay, let's bring this together? I know there are people out there who are trying to do that with integrated therapies and some things that are more eclectic and take into account a variety of different influences. None of them are really taking off in a significant way, obviously, or else we would hear about them more. But are we leading towards more diversification or something that's more unified? And I'm not sure. What do you guys think?
I think it's so interesting. I think when I was doing my undergrad many years ago, they were saying how eventually you train to be a certain type of therapist. So you're a psychodynamic therapist or you're a cognitive behavioral therapist. And it was believed that you have to become really good at that one theory. And then they realized after, with the whole dodo bird verdict and whatnot, that these techniques work equally as well. So I think it needs to be.
What's that mean? What's that mean? Give me a what's that mean alert here.
So it's this meta-analysis from this guy, Bruce Wampold, and he did a bunch of research and found out that all these great therapeutic techniques that we've already discussed work equally as well. So he was saying that there's actually other factors that lead to positive outcomes. For instance, the therapeutic relationship, expectancy factors like placebo, what the client brings to the table, that accounts for 40% of it. So client characteristics, and then 15% is actually the technique, but a little deceiving because good luck trying to facilitate any change without any knowledge of techniques, right? So they all kind of work together in a synergistic way. So I think we've kind of moved more towards the whole idea of eclectic approaches, because we can't really fit clients into our theories or approaches. We got to be able to adapt a bit and find ones that fit their needs. So I think from a therapeutic perspective, I think a holistic or more of an integrative approach or eclectic approach is probably going to be here to stay. That's just my perspective on it.
An eclectic approach is here to stay, which is fine. There's a dilemma though. Again, another dilemma here that I find, that the more theories there are, I think the more challenging it gets for clinicians to communicate with one another at times, because we're talking about kind of different stuff. Say I have someone in individual therapy, and they're also in couples therapy with someone else, and we're working from very different viewpoints or worldviews about how clients work. That's becomes a challenge. And at some point it becomes really difficult for the public to know kind of what they want as well, right? I mean, there are so many theories out there. I don't understand them, and I've been a psychologist for 20 years, and
yeah,
I don't understand all the theories at all. How in the world is someone feeling some distress supposed to be able to discern between one therapy and another in order to find the help that they need? Yeah,
that's true. I think that 40% that the client brings to the table is client characteristics. I see that as indicators of resiliency. So I think positive psychology has also been very popular as of late. So trying to find out what some of those character strengths and virtues are can help, just in a more general sense. But it's kind of tricky though, Ryan, because Scott Miller did a lot of research on this, and he was finding that the seasoned veterans and your therapists out there often do worse than brand new therapists at times, right? So again, he says be very cautious about focusing too much in technique here, and there's other things that are important, like outcome measures, or like encouraging feedback, and because the client doesn't necessarily know what all these theories are. I think it's up to the therapist to kind of discern, or based on what the client's sharing with you, is to adapt and find something that would be a good fit. And if it isn't, then they can provide that feedback and kind of be able to adapt when needed, right?
True. Yes, I agree with that. And I also think that the client's experience, it varies over time as well. There's parts of this that, maybe a few sessions in, they're going to feel like this isn't working for me, but then once the relationship builds and they feel a greater connection with the therapist, they might find, okay, this is a better connection for me. It's just that some therapies even value that relationship more than others do, right?
Yeah.
So it's a challenge. I think I guess I'm just being kind of a naysayer in some ways, saying, gosh, this is it's very difficult to know what the future is going to hold for psychotherapy, and even what it should be, really.
Yeah. And who are we to say? We don't have that crystal ball. We won't know for sure, right? It's who knew that polyvagal theory was coming down the pipeline 5 years ago, but there it is, and took over, and slam. Everybody wants to know what it's about and how to utilize that in your counseling room. And it seems like right now everybody's grasping at, like, how do I make this tangible?
Yeah.
I want to know what I'm doing is tangible.
Yeah.
Okay, I gotta throw out one other thing here too. This is maybe my most cynical comment yet, if you're ready. And this is speaking from a guy who has, I work for a magazine where I interview people who have developed a lot of theories, right? A lot of people have developed a lot of these different approaches. But I know that there are people, and in fact, I remember back in graduate school, one of my classmates said, one of their goals for their career was, I want to develop my own therapeutic modality, right? And I remember asking her, what's that going to be? And she says, I don't know yet. I just want to develop one, right? So it's sort of like a bit of like the Wild West in some ways, like staking a claim. Like there's some therapists out there, you know, like my classmate who's like, this is how I'll make a name for myself. I'll develop my own therapy approach, and then that's what will, you know, bring me success or you know, money or whatever. It'll make my business, right? And people can just kind of do that. I could develop my own Ryan House approach to therapy, write about it, write a book about it, and then suddenly I have my own modality to add to those 700. It's the Ryan House therapy. And then I do trainings on that, and I talk to people about how effective it is and how helpful it is. And there's a business side to this that is not always science-based. It's not always, you know, based in truly the best interest of seeking truth and doing the best for humanity. But some people who are like, hey, I just want to make a buck, you know?
Yeah.
So anyway, hate to sound like the cynic here, but that's a reality that I think people need to know.
Well, big time.
That's a good point, right? Like, I feel like there's probably, well, not probably, like, well, I don't have research to back it up, but there's, yeah, I think there's, if you want to help younger therapists or newer therapists be better therapists, or any therapist be better therapists, I would think you would want to pour into having a mentor or like a supervisor, a clinical supervisor, and making sure that relationship is working well, and versus coming up with your own theory and then training people in that theory without any certainty that your theory is doing any better than the other 700 when it's all about relationship, right?
Yeah, I don't know if we need more theories right now. And I think over the past 4 or 5 years, correct me if I'm wrong, it's been a lot of stuff that we see is people rehashing the same kind of ideas, a lot of positive psychology and mindfulness and neurobiology and
just putting new names to it.
Yeah,
right.
So I don't know if there's anything huge coming. Polyvagal theory is intriguing, but that he's a biologist, right? I got some really cool research that he's done. Yeah, I think
also polyvagal theory, and I've spoken with Porges before, you know, but he'll even admit the fact that polyvagal theory is a theory. It hasn't been proven out. I mean, a lot of the claims that they make are not facts. They're theoretical. It's like, oh, well, if the vagus nerve does this, then maybe it creates this in people, but it's not even factual. So we got to be careful about the claims that are made sometimes by these folks, or the people who believe in these theories, right?
Yeah, and I've heard similar critiques in neurobiology in general.
Yeah.
Over asserting or making some strong assumptions from the fMRI readings, right?
Yeah.
You know, I think moving forward, trauma is such a big area of focus. And I think we've talked about how every mental health disorder in the DSM fits into one of two categories. You know, behaviors or thoughts that are very chaotic, or behaviors and thoughts that are very rigid.
But both come from trauma.
Yeah, a lot of it comes from trauma, addiction. There's been a big connection there too. So, but I've always liked existentialism, just trying to find meaning and purpose and whatnot.
I think existentialism might make a swing here, back in.
Already is amongst the kid, like the teens, like what's the point and what's the purpose, and you know,
those questions are coming up so much, and especially with climate change and everything going on in the world, there's a lot of like existential crisis at a young age, or that's what I'm viewing it as. So
So I heard there's a speaker I've heard about. I read some of his material. Like, his name's Paul Chappelle, and he's an American, served in the military, and now he does talks I think is a pretty well-known speaker, and he talked about how Maslow's hierarchy of needs should be turned upside down. Because if you don't have meaning and purpose, then what is the point of going through all those steps? So you're saying if you have meaning and purpose, then you're going to find a way to survive, going to find a way to make sure those basic needs are met, which is an interesting theory as well, right? Because a lot of people don't have that meaning and purpose, and they're just, they're not engaging. They're not doing much of anything. Yeah, Bruce Perry is a big trauma expert. We're going to obviously in the process of reading his book, but very intrigued to hear or listen to this or read this book and see what he has to say.
Mhm.
We talk about evolutionary psychology, and I know that's very much a theory as well, but the same themes keep on popping up. You can study it as much as you want, but the best predictor of physical as well as your mental health is the quality of your connections in your life, right?
Yeah, and that's
Or
being shown over and
nature,
over again.
or contributing, finding that purpose. Like these are themes that we know to be true, right?
Mhm. So then what's in the way of finding that connection, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And what can we do to get rid of that barrier?
Which is
So I'm
often
thinking,
trauma, or
well, I'm
lots of things can happen.
circling back to like the younger teenagers and the existential crises of like, is the world gonna implode while they're like, are they the last generation kind of thing, right? So I wonder if in some weird way we almost have to loop back in like more acceptance type therapy as well, to say
Sure.
what's in your control, what's not in your control, and like we have to accept that this is where we're at, and how can we move forward from this, and how can we find meaning and purpose and fulfillment given the context that we're in.
Mm-hmm.
Let's get creative. So maybe there's going to be a creativity or a curiosity thing, or if it's going to be relationship or trauma focused existentialism. I think we got to get something deeper than how does our nervous system work. I think we're beyond that.
Yeah,
A good point.
I would agree with that. All right, since we're talking about what the future might look like, I just jotted down a couple ideas here. These guys were talking, getting my juices flowing here. I think I'm thinking of 4 areas that I think are going to be big areas for psychology, and as a result, psychotherapy as well in the future. One of them is prevention and screening. I think there's going to be like a greater understanding of mental health issues. Even the Olympics pointed that out, and more famous people like your own Prince Harry coming out talking about mental health issues.
Our own Prince Harry.
Your own, yeah, part of the Commonwealth, yes.
Just on a quick side note, did you know our Prime Minister, Justin Trudeau, his mom has like severe mental health. She's bipolar.
Oh, I did not know that.
I saw her speak.
Yeah, so they live locally, like he grew up locally to where we are. But yeah, his mom diagnosed bipolar, so she has a memoir and speaks about it, huge advocate.
Wow.
Anyways, there we are.
So
I
I
have
think
her book if you want to read it. Sorry. Okay.
Me too, changing my mind.
Yeah.
maybe that'll be our next book club selection. Who knows? But prevention and screening, I think, are going to be a big deal. Prevention, of course, mental health prevention, but screening, I think, is going to be a big deal too. This is the psychologist in me who says, I think people may take more mental health, have more mental health checkups, more exams and things like that actually have some objective data. If someone was able to take a test when they were 16, 18, and then another one when they're 30 and 40 and 50, whatever that might be, you might be able to see where some patterns are developing, maybe some decline might be happening. Even better if it was a yearly test. Anyway, prevention and screening. Next one, you guys already hit on basically, but I think loneliness and intimacy is going to be a major mental health issue in the coming decades.
Those are perfect words for it.
Thanks to my phone and other people's phones and other people's computers, and kind of the isolation that we all experience and kind of the pseudo intimacy we have through social media. I think that loneliness and intimacy are going to be massive mental health issues going forward. also pandemics, they have some contribution to loneliness and intimacy, and who knows when we're going to get out of this one. Another one that I think is gaining more traction, but I think we're going to maybe hear more about it because I think it's getting more publicized, is the idea of financial stress and the contributions of financial PTSD, basically. People who are suffering sort of traumatic experiences based on going bankrupt, going into collections, having banks or collection agencies calling them, kind of hunting them down, trying to get their money. With more and more college age students getting credit cards and also student loan debts, I think there's a lot of opportunities for people to feel pretty traumatized by their financial state. And the final one, which it really has been talked about for a long time on a physical dimension, but not so much on a psychological dimension, and that's aging. As our populations get older and older, people are living a longer life. And I know that people have been talking for a long time about how, investing in nursing homes and that sort of thing is a good idea because people are getting older, living longer. But I don't think people have spent enough time thinking about the psychology of that and what happens when someone is maybe feeling more isolated and withdrawn and not able to connect emotionally for a couple of decades at the end of their life, or if they're afraid of that happening, or if they have a physical incapacitation and they're actually having to live with that later on in life. And how are we going to address these folks, especially if they have limited monetary resources,
I think that's an awesome list there, Ryan. Holy smokes. I think you did a lot of good brainstorming there.
Thanks.
But yeah, and the baby boomers are getting older. So I was chatting with my dad about that. Like, that's a huge generation, a big generation there who's aging and dealing with a lot of loss in their lives. And just like you said, it's kind of a few of your things: aging, what comes with that, and there's a loneliness. So I think it all kind of goes in together for a few of those. That population's going to need a lot of support.
They are.
But some overlap though, because you mentioned loneliness. Like, if someone has strong connections, that would probably buffer them with the aging process, right? Or
For
the
sure.
financial instability and stress.
Sure.
I think there's a lot of overlap there.
Yeah. But then those people who loved ones are just, they're outliving people or just losing people, right? There's only so many. Yeah. Try to help their connections as much as you can, but I think at some point, those nursing homes fill up and then people just seem to be so lonely. But anyways,
Totally.
Not everyone.
Not everyone, but also, as I mean, hate to say, but the older generations right now were not they weren't privileged with as much kind of mental health knowledge as the younger generations are, right? So like Gen X and millennials and Gen Z. I mean, as our generations kind of grow older, very much aware of the effects of depression, anxiety, loneliness, all these different isolation, all these problems. I think there's going to be more people like saying, hey, wait a minute, we need to, unfortunately, that's kind of going to be the catalyst for people paying more attention to that. And that's why I think psychology will have to pay more attention to it in the future.
Yeah,
For sure.
I was going to mention too, I think all of us have done the basic training for EMDR, and I hope we've gained some more understanding in terms of what the mechanism of change is there. I have a theory in terms of what it is, but I don't know, with the right client in the right situation, my goodness, that technique can help people move forward,
Absolutely.
process trauma and whatnot. So more like, I guess, a body-based type therapy, back to the somatic stuff. But
You're talking about that as another wave in the future, another
it's gaining
strong.
a lot of popularity, right? A lot of, I think it's a pretty, the amount of people getting trained in EMDR and being, going to joining crisis response initiatives and whatnot. And I just think seems like it's gaining steam, EMDR. I'm not sure if Ryan, if you think differently, if it's, but,
I mean, I don't even think it's a matter of opinion. I think just objectively, yes, it is gaining steam, and it's much more widely. The trainees are multiplying, so
Yeah,
it is just growing.
It's a bit of a unusual technique. A lot of people think it's kind of odd. It's not like your traditional talk therapy situation, right?
Right. But
So-
when Prince Harry's talking about it on international television, it's going to get some press.
It's true.
That's true. That's true.
Yeah, doing the butterfly hug. I heard. I didn't actually watch it.
Once again, you're Harry getting a bunch of press for it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Anything else we got for the future? Anything else you guys think might be a new wave or something you'd like to see happen regarding psychology in the future? I would personally like to see. I've noticed a decrease in stigmatization of mental health issues and of psychotherapy. I believe that there's less stigma associated with that, but I would think there's still a ways to go when it comes to that.
Yeah, I agree. Better
Yeah.
funding would be
Yes.
great, like recognition from insurance policies or funders.
Yes.
Or a better understanding of those insurance policies and funders on how therapy works and how 5 sessions is just getting to know each other. Like,
Yeah, it's true. Oddly enough, yeah, Prince Harry, the whole stigma thing too. Like a lot of celebrities and athletes are talking more about it, which I think is fantastic. Oh, what a change, even over the last 10 years. But I think it's good to remind people that we have yet to master therapy and mental health. My goodness, our field has made strides, but we have so far to go. And that's the intriguing thing about it is kind of like the Wild West a bit.
yeah,
There's so much uncertainty moving forward and what's going to stick and what's going to help people long term.
Yeah.
So it's not like accounting here or like a profession where they've got it pretty nailed down.
Very true. I think we're getting closer all the time, but I agree, Chris. I think and we might have to just make peace with the fact that since the human psyche is something that's so elusive and so variant, it's hardly, no two brains are alike, no two people are alike. That to say we're ever going to perfect psychotherapy may be
lofty.
and impossible. We may just have to always be evolving and trying to figure it out and striving.
And on that note, huge appreciation and gratitude for all the researchers so that we can learn from what they're like, all of that behind the scenes work, all the different researchers and like all the different population groups and demographics. Like, it's pretty incredible when we look at that. Like, it's not my forte, but huge appreciation for those guys to be out there doing studies and checking stuff out, and so that we can then incorporate that into what we think is best practice. Right?
Yeah, grinding it out.
It's true. It's true.
It's not just us coming up with theories. These theories come from research, most often, not always, but so thank you to those researchers.
Sometimes the theories just come from a graduate student who says, I want to become famous.
That's true. We got to watch out for those.
Those happen too. Buyer beware. Caveat emptor, everybody. Look out.
Yeah.
Let's wrap it up for tonight, you guys. Brooke, thank you for a very Brooke topic. Wow. So Brooke,
You guys should be super excited for Chris's next topic. I remember what it was. It was very vanilla.
Oh, jeez.
Yee, shots fired.
Wow.
No kidding.
Throwing
Just wait.
shade.
The
Look at
finest topic yet.
Wow.
Chris is going to ask me later. So, what was your second idea for a topic? And
There
then
we
he's
go.
going to steal it.
You may. We'll see everybody in 2 weeks for the book club, right? Book club.
Yep.
Do we have
My
a?
topic to you, Bruce Perry and Oprah Winfrey.
Can we do a quick recommendation for what people can do next week instead of listening to us?
Listen to a previous episode.
Oh, except for the toxic masculinity.
Don't do that one.
Our boot camp encourages people to do certain things each day. So I'm going to encourage our listeners to spend 20 minutes in nature 3 times next week.
That's nice.
Doing
And-
anything in particular, or just being in nature, being outside?
Just being outside, you can go for a walk if you want, but just notice what's around you, focus on the senses,
Intentionally engage with the nature.
just be in nature. Yeah.
Okay. I'm down with it. That sounds great. I'll
Good
do
idea.
that.
Mhm.
We'll do that. Okay. So for us tonight, that's it. Like and subscribe on Apple, Google, Podbean, Audible, Spotify, Stitcher, or YouTube. Send your questions to info@mentalhealthbootcamp.com. Visit us on Facebook or Instagram. Tell a friend or 2 or more. And good night, everybody. All of the ghosts of psychology, past, present, and future. Good night.
Good
Night.
night.
Toodles.